So we wanted to come up with a strategy and explain the thinking around how to choose the right collaboration technology. You're going to see some products upstairs. At least 3 or 4 companies have collaboration products upstairs. Obviously, there are a lot more on the market as well. But this is just a way of thinking, a way of looking at the market, a way of figuring out how you would want to make those choices. So our names, our contact information is there. The IMCCA is the sponsor of this collaboration track, the Interactive Multimedia and Collaborative Communications Alliance. They are the nonprofit organization that's been representing UC&C in collaboration, or UCN collaboration, for more than 20 years. There's a booth upstairs. They'll be there tomorrow when the show's open. If you're not a member, you should join. It's free. Who are you?
I am David Maldo. You could find out more about me at letsdovideo.com. I've been covering this space for almost 20 years. For some reason, I still feel like the new guy, I guess because I'm blessed to have friends who are even more knowledgeable and experienced that work with me. I started at Wainhouse Research, Telepresence Options, where I did a lot of writing, and now I'm really focusing on my YouTube channel, which is growing very well, and I'm very pleased with it. Please check it out, YouTube at Let's Do Video.
Mr. Video, the guy who coined the phrase, let's do video, before people were actually doing video. And this is more information about me than even my family wants to know about. I wear a lot of hats in the industry. Most recently, after decades in financial services and in broadcasting and other things, I'm now joined with Mr. Dave Michaels, who happens to be here, as an industry analyst for Talking Points. And we look at what's going on in the market and try and give our clients some of the best advice that we can. So reach out to me if you'd like. Again, our emails, both David and mine, are in the presentation, and we're very easy to find. Just Google David and they'll all come up. So anybody who says this is easy has never done it. You see ads from manufacturers. You've even seen ads on television a few years ago where people sit down and they make a call. And yeah, if you're using FaceTime to talk with your friends on a phone, it works most of the time, and when it doesn't, you don't really care. But when you get into an enterprise environment, when you're dealing with security issues, when you're dealing with connectivity issues, when you're not the king of the hill, you have to be under a lot of other things, it's not that easy to do. So we want to try and give you a strategy to help you figure out how to get from the mess and the confusion to something that's working in really well and cohesively. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, there is good news. The good news is the equipment today is so good, and a lot of it is plug and play, and a lot of it does work right off the bat. It's not the way it used to be in the old days being 6 years ago. I mean, not that old days. One story I remember that I love is Craig Malloy, who was the CEO of Lifesize. And Lifesize is one of the companies that I covered, and if you cover them, our stuff is like everyone else at Tamberg at the time and Polycom. Plug it in and you make a call, everything works, everything is great. Craig left the industry, became the CEO of another company, immediately put his life sizes in the rooms, and said, I can't get these things to work. We got to come back. He came back to the industry to try to fix it. So it was hard. Now it's easier, but now it's harder to select because now we don't have 3 companies making, meeting room stuff. We have, how many video bars are there?
We've lost count. There were more companies making them than not making them at Infocom this year. So it's easier in some ways and harder in other ways, but we're going to try and give you some strategies to use to make good decisions. Okay?
I got a question.
Go.
Are you equating the term collaboration with video meeting rooms, or what do you mean by collaboration?
I think in context of this presentation, collaboration is all parts across the UC spectrum. It's voice, it's video, it's messaging, and most of the advice that we'll be giving in this presentation, while it highlights video, because video is kind of the new star, it applies to all of it.
Yeah, I mean, just look at our vendors today. No one's selling video meetings anymore. Everyone's selling platform, right? Everyone's selling the whole UC platform. So I think we're focusing on video here, but it is a small part of, I think chat's the biggest part of it, but a small part of the bigger thing.
So again, the concept here is if you're looking to improve your collaboration capabilities at your organization and you want to go upstairs and find some gear, you're going about it wrong. You want to figure out how to organize the selection process and what research to do in advance. And that's really the advice that we're giving over here. The first part of that checklisting, the first part of creating your needs assessment is what does your client need? Are you building this for yourself? Are you building this for a client organization? What are their actual needs? Anybody who believes that they're going to be able to do collaboration on a single platform, we're a Zoom shop, that's all we're going to use, or we're a Microsoft shop. They're not paying attention to the real world. Everybody is working across all platforms. Even if you're at a unified platform internally in your organization, you're dealing with customers, you're dealing with clients, you're dealing with vendors and providers. You're going to be working across many of them, so you have to figure that out first. And I know you have the point you wanted to make on this, right?
Yeah, I think it's crucial that the first thing we're looking at is the software. And that's a big change from the way it was in the old days 4 or 5 years ago. And when I think about
Just say
video,
pre-pandemic. It works pre-pandemic.
okay, pre-pandemic, or actually pre-Zoom maybe. It used to be the experience was defined by the hardware. You bought a Polycom, codec and camera, and you bought two of them, put one in one room, one in the other room, and they called each other. That was a Polycom experience. You got Tambergs, you had a Tamberg experience. If you called a Polycom to a Tamberg, you'd share audio and video, but each side would have a sacrificed experience. You wouldn't get a full Polycom experience, a full Tamberg experience. Now the experience is Zoom, it's Teams, it's WebEx. The endpoints they're still important, they have to be high quality, but they're not defining the experience. I'm not saying it doesn't matter which bar you buy, but regardless of which bar you buy, if you're using Zoom, you're going to have a Zoom experience. So that's what you need to support, and that's where you need to start. You need to see what your team is, and obviously, like you said, no one's going to say we're a Zoom shop. They're a Zoom and Team shop. Find out how they're using it, what they're using it for, and then find the gear that supports it. And some video bars work with anything, but some video bars are really, really especially good with Zoom or especially good with Teams, and if you're down that road, you might want one of those. So start with the software.
Okay. The next part of this is understanding what the client's needs are. What is their current estate? What's going on in terms of connectivity? One of the things that I like to talk to people about, especially in the pandemic, was this idea of the flush test. How much bandwidth you have coming into your house? You have 10 gig line, whatever, whatever connectivity is, does it work for everything going on in your house? If you are on a call, if your partner is on a call, if one of your kids is doing schoolwork, if somebody else is streaming YouTube, if everybody flushes the toilets at the same time, does the plumbing break? You want to make sure that in a home environment that you've checked the bandwidth and connectivity, and you want to make sure in an enterprise environment you've done the same thing. You also have to assess the physical plant that you're going into. Is the communication capability that you're installing something that's happening that needs to work during a blackout, during a power outage, during a crisis? How much of it needs to be on-prem versus to the cloud? How much local failover do you need? And then you're also assessing the room conditions. This is a very large room. We couldn't put a video bar in this room and have it to be functional to the back room unless we were adding additional equipment. So you're building for a large difference of rooms, a large selection of spaces, or they're very specific sizes that you're looking for. All of those things you need to know going into it, because then you'd be able to look at a product that we reviewed last week, looks really fine, works really fine, but it really only works about 10 feet back. Can't put that into a room that's 15 or 20 feet long, even though you'd think you could, because bars of that size work that way. So these are the things you need to know going into it. What are your actual needs?
Yeah, it's funny. I used to think this kind of stuff wasn't as important because I think, well, our modern offices are being designed for this. They're being designed with power everywhere and with Ethernet everywhere and with good lighting. We know about acoustics now, so I wasn't so worried about this stuff. Then I saw a presentation by our friend Craig Durr, another analyst in our community, and he pointed out, or he had statistics that showed most of the office buildings we're using were built in the 80s. They built so many that they didn't need to build anymore, build as much after that. Most of them were built in the 80s. And we didn't do a lot. There's a lot of things that weren't done well in the 80s, and I think this is one of them. So we have these 80s design buildings that didn't even know about all this stuff, and now we're trying to make things work in there. So we do have to worry about these kind of things.
And then there's budget. The ideal solution for one of my clients was spending about $100,000, and their budget came back and said, what can you do for $7,000? Do I say I can say goodbye and have a nice weekend and just ignore them? Or do I give them a solution within their budget? These are the things you need to figure out. What is the client's budget? What is the balance of cost versus features? Even if a client has said, this is our budget, if you stretch 10% or 15% over that and can make the case that they can amortize it, it's something that organizations need to think about as they make these decisions. Great example now that you'll see some of upstairs when the show floor opens tomorrow is the concept of displays and generally new technology that's for indoors it's new, for outdoors it's been around for decades, but the concept of DV-LED, direct view LED. There are really only like 4 plants in the world right now building all the glass that you see for all the displays that are LCD. You know, the 3 of them are, I think, in China. 1 of them is in Korea. Everybody's just buying the same glass and labeling it and whatever. And they're very inexpensive. There's not a lot of margin. The prices are the prices. And you're seeing a lot of companies leave the business. Well, I read today that Panasonic just got back into the business, which is interesting. We'll have to look at that. But if you compare direct view LED at small pixel pitch at like 0.9 or even 0.7 before you get to micro, it's a little more expensive now, but you don't have to throw it out in 2 years. It's got 10 years, and it doesn't burn. So sometimes you need to convince a client that the technology that they're looking at might be better off if they think of it as a 5 or 10-year purchase as opposed to an immediate purchase. And these are all the cost considerations you have to put into your factor into your decisions.
And the good news is I'm finding that there are a lot more affordable options. If you're, it used to be, oh, we have to do telepresence, that's $250,000. The video bars now are affordable, they're good quality. If they can't afford the $70,000 room you suggested, maybe not a $7,000 room, but we can do something better to make it more affordable. We used to have to say no a lot. There was a company, about 10 years ago, that wanted to do digital signage. And they hired me to figure out digital signage. And one of the options we're looking at was a company called VBrick. I'm not even sure if VBrick is still around. And when we,
It's a Cisco company. There we go.
oh, yeah. But we priced it out and we told them how much it would. You have to have a box at the time at each, sign and how much it would cost. And they said, "Oh my God, forget about it. It was way too much." And it wasn't even, okay, we'll find another option. It's we're not doing digital signage. That doesn't happen anymore. Now it's like, okay, we can't do it this way. Let's find an affordable way. If you can't do expensive digital signage, Zoom Rooms has digital signage. You might be able to use something like that. So if budget is a problem, it's not a yes or no. It's a, okay, let's figure this out.
Okay, so we've talked about most of the requirements, plus or minus a few other little ones that you need to put together. Now you have to create a list and go shopping to find the right solution, software, hardware, and everything else that you'll need. One of the most important caveats that I recommend to all clients is don't do any of this on paper. Don't do any of this at a trade show. Go to where there is an executive broadcast, a demonstration center, or some other facility that's got the equipment that you're considering involved, and actually listen to it and watch it and try it and understand it. Because no matter how much they tell you it's great, it's not going to be the same as comparing and listening to it yourself, hearing and seeing the devices that you're considering.
And these companies, they have these demo centers for a reason. Zoom just opened a place in London that must have been so expensive. And it's not a Zoom office, it's a demo center. It's for customers to see, right? And Poly has one in New York. I mean, all kinds of companies have them, and they have them for a reason. They want you to come in and see their stuff.
And they've got different names, EBC, CBC, they're all different initials that represent the fact that it's a place where you can go and see and hear their stuff. This is an important list, and we're going to spend some time talking about this and maybe talking with each other and going back and forth. This is some of the most important things that you need to understand, and if you haven't considered all of these things in terms of buying equipment, you're missing something. So compatibility is the first one. It's the most important thing. If you've decided that you're going to be a Microsoft shop and you want to only use Microsoft, so you're looking for gear that's compatible with Microsoft Teams and other capabilities like that, what if 2 years, 3 years down the road you change your mind? What this industry used to have to do is forklift changes. You have to come in and rip out all the gear and put in new gear. We don't really recommend that anymore. Now we want to make sure that if we're buying something, there's at least an integration path. A company like Neat will let you switch back and forth between Zoom and Teams. They won't let you do it between calls. It's a complicated process. You have to reboot, you have to reassign the machine, but you can get it to work with both things. Same thing for equipment from Poly. Cisco WebEx equipment does the same kind of thing where Cisco WebEx will let you make a Teams call and they'll let you make a WebEx call, so you can switch back and forth, but they're a little bit of a unique case. You want to make sure that what you're buying doesn't lock you into a platform that you might regret being in a year or two later on.
And this is one thing I really have to complain about our vendors. I like to be positive. I say their vendors have done a great job. The new video bars, they're all really, really good. I mean, the hardware is good, but this is an issue. I talk to integrator after integrator after integrator that say, oh, we just outfitted 100 meeting rooms for a client. We put 2 video bars in each meeting room. Because one does Zoom and the other one does, WebEx and Teams or whatever. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You really put 2 video bars in your meeting rooms? And I'm like, yes, we do. I'm not okay with that. I think every video bar, hey, Rowan Trollope did a tweet storm about this 3 years ago that everyone got all mad about. I think if I have any video bar, I should be able to take a Zoom call, take a Teams call, that's the world I want to live in. That's not the world we live in. So you really have to be careful when you're buying your hardware that it doesn't just support your main platform. It's not just Zoom. What if you need to take a WebEx call? What if one of your partners uses it? You need to figure that out. And I just did a briefing with PEXIP that does some of this kind of interop stuff, and I don't hear people talking about them a lot, but they kind of have a solution for this.
Yeah, no, interoperability is the key, whether you're doing it on-prem with your devices or doing it with a third party, but compatibility is very, very important. Reliability is very important. If you're buying gear based on what the manufacturer is telling you and what the service provider is telling you, and you're not asking, well, can you let me speak with 3 or 4 customers? Or you know what, I'll do my own research, let me find 3 or 4 customers. Or if you look online and you find out that all the wonderful promises that everything worked didn't work, that's out there. If you buy something that's supposed to work, that everybody said worked, and it doesn't, it happens. We're in a technology space. But if you buy something and then find out afterwards that everybody was already returning it and having problems with it, that's some homework you should have done.
And you're pretty safe usually staying with the main name vendors that we all know. I haven't heard any really terrible things recently.
I have.
Oh, you have? Oh, are we allowed to talk about it? Or?
It's out there. Okay. Just because it's a well-known brand and a name brand doesn't mean that it's reliable gear. Again, you have to check how many of these things have been returned for service, how many updates have they had. It's
the updates.
The
that
data's
could be a
out
problem.
there. We'll go into the next slide. We'll talk about some of that stuff. Serviceability. Are you installing this just in New York? Are you installing this just in Denver or just in California? Is there a service provider? Is it your integrator? Is it somebody else that's putting this in? Are you putting these in around the world? Do you need to know that you have a service technician on call in Turkey or in Croatia or somewhere else, or in Asia? The availability of support and the ease of maintenance is very important. How do you manage it? How do you support it? How do you maintain it? Don't make a decision on a piece of gear that you like just because you like it and you like the price and you like the look, unless you find out that you can service it where you're putting it.
Now, for serviceability, do you feel more comfortable with a company that makes its own gear as opposed to, there's a lot of video bars out there that are made at the same factory that have a million different brands on them that we see out on the trade floor. Do you feel more comfortable with this company, they make their own stuff? I know they made this. I keep saying video bar, but there's other things we care about. But they made this device. I feel more comfortable they'll be able to service it.
It's a tough question because I actually personally don't like it when companies use ODMs to build their gear. But I've had this debate out loud with a number of other people, and a number of people just don't care. So the advice here is not don't buy from an ODM. And an ODM, an original design manufacturer, would be a company that you go to say, hey, we make vacuums, but I really want to sell a video bar. Design me a video bar, make it for me, and then give it to me, and I'll put my name on it, and I'll sell it as if it was mine. And that's happening in at least 50% of the market right now. My advice here is not about that. My advice here is whoever you're buying from, have them tell you how they're servicing the products internationally. And if there's a service model, then it's fine. I personally don't like that ODM model, but people have other opinions. Reputation is very important. If you can't find a majority of people to say good things about the company you're thinking of doing business with, don't do business with them. Seems very straightforward and obvious, but a lot of people are ignoring it. There are a lot of sources for it, and again, we're going to share some on the next page.
Yeah, nothing more to add on that.
Okay. Growth and talent. How many in this room are on LinkedIn? Okay. Have you been watching LinkedIn lately? Have you been seeing companies that are letting people go? Have you been seeing companies that are hiring people? Maybe you want to do business with companies that are hiring people and not companies that are letting people go. What are the reasons they're letting them go? Is it just a financial thing, or are they having problems? Or are they letting the wrong people go? Are they letting the smart people go? That's got to be a factor in your decision making as well. You know, a number of companies, including a couple of organizations that I work with, you know, are purchased by another company, and the first thing they do is get rid of all the talent. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases where there's acquisitions in the industry, many of the companies doing the acquiring don't realize the greatest assets wear shoes. When you lose the bright people that have supported your company for a long time, what is the company's reputation? So that's an important piece as well.
I always say when you're choosing, whether it's software or hardware, you know, half of my decision is, oh, I actually like this piece of hardware, and the other half is, what do I think of the development team? Because whatever that, again, video bar or whatever that device is, if a year from now we come up with some new feature, they can upload the firmware. I probably won't have to buy a new device. They'll be able to add that if it's a good development team.
And that's the next point. That's the headroom.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I'm always focused on, you know, oh, I like this neat bar, I like this poly bar, I like this whatever bar. I think this company has a development team that's going to give me the new features next year and the year after that.
And then, again, testimonials and feedback. What are you hearing out there? What's in this, what are people saying? You would be surprised how much information is available to you to make these decisions, to base these decisions on. Most people just don't do the research. And I'm going to click this as you talk, and we're going to talk about some of those, unless you have something you want to add to that.
Just the only thing to be careful is that a lot of companies, I think they have haters out there, and I think they have, it almost seems like they have paid haters. Sometimes I see on Reddit, or, you know, one of the less savory sites out there, Reddit is pretty unsavory sometimes, there's a new Zoom announcement, and a bunch of people start saying, oh, that terrible company does terrible things, or the new Microsoft announcement. And I'm like, how do all these people hate these companies so much? It seems almost like organized. So sometimes the user feedback, you need to take it with a grain of salt.
You have to get actual users.
Yeah, not just commenters on the internet. Life size, we mentioned them.
You're talking about Craig. I always have this picture of Craig Malloy sitting in his office, you know, with the door barred, people trying to knock it down with axes, and I'm not leaving. But you know, a lot of people, Life Size was the first company to make HD video. I don't know how many people even remember that. They were the first ones out there with high definition video, because Craig, a visionary, thought it was the future, and he was right.
Actually, that's a funny story. My first thing I ever did in this industry, I was working with our old friend Ira Weinstein, and Life Size was new, and I was asked to make a PowerPoint what we thought about 720. And I was so new I didn't know anything, but Ira and our opinion together was, what everyone's asking for is easy connectivity. It's so hard to make a meeting work. The 3 o'clock meeting starts at 3:20 because no one can make it work. Make this stuff connect, make it work, make it error resilient, because if you're doing a call over the public internet, you couldn't because the packet loss would kill it. These are things that are stopping video. No one wants 720p. My TV newscaster is 480p. That's what I think I should look like on a camera. And we did this PowerPoint saying no one cares about 720p, and we were wrong. 720p took the world by storm. Everyone started doing 720p. Everyone got excited about video. It was big. And Craig was right, and I was wrong.
Well, were you? Because I think connectivity, ease of connectivity, is what made the telepresence era take off. That was the whole point. But you can't fight with a talking point.
Yeah.
And HD was a talking point at the time. So
Big one.
that was one example. This is an interesting thing. Jobber is here on the floor. They're a great company owned by GN. It's still GN Netcom? I think it's, anyway. They launched their latest version of true wireless in-ear earbuds, and then 2 days later said they're not doing wireless earbuds anymore. They're killing the product that they just launched and all the other ones that they make in that space. They're staying out of the consumer space. Again, this information's out there that they're deciding to do it. You can still go out and buy some of these products, but they're discontinued. They're not making them anymore.
And I kind of understand it because there's so many of those, and there's so many good ones, and so many cheap ripoffs. There's that weird website that's like a fake Amazon, and they have for $2 you can get stuff like this. I can't believe it actually works, but it's out there. It's really weird.
You were talking about Reddit before. You know, this HP acquisition has ruined Poly customer service. Now, is this a hater, or is this somebody who's got a real story about a customer service problem? And when you look and do some of this research and you ask the company, hey, you know, so-and-so told me that you weren't able to service their gear. What's the story there? If they've got a story, fine. You know, if you've got an overwhelming number of complaints online about a company or a product, maybe take it into consideration.
Yeah, if it's just one comment, I wouldn't worry about it. But if you're seeing a lot of this stuff, it's a problem. Video, I love video. They were so cool. That was the first company that made video kind of work over the internet. You could do a call and it would handle a packet loss. I could be in New York and you could be in California. We could do a video call, and it wasn't Skype. It was a business video call. One thing about video, the name. I actually spoke up. Marty Hollander said that he was the one who came up with the name, and it's pronounced, because everyone's pronounced it video, video with a Y. He says it's pronounced video. It's pronounced the same, but it just looks cooler. I'm like, yeah, but no one knows how to pronounce it. Are you using video or video with a Y? But it was a great company.
So these are essentially all failures in the industry. Blue Jeans, oh my God.
Love those guys.
Brilliant man founded that, Krish Ramakrishnan, who sat down with me on a rainy day in the lobby in a hotel in New York and opened up his pitch book and was showing me how every video device was an island, but now you can use his service to connect all of the islands. And I said it wasn't going to work just as a service. You have to have a port 80. You have to be able to get it into enterprises on a web page. And then 2 months later, he had it on a web page. And they were the first people to do it. And he got killed by Zoom.
Yeah.
It just,
And by Verizon.
well, he sold, the Blue Jeans was sold to Verizon.
And they didn't do a good job with it.
And Verizon was the wrong company to manage it. And they've now discontinued the product. These are all viable products at the time, and the research out there could tell you that these are companies you probably should. So we're sharing these with you because these are all obvious things that you can search for yourself on the internet. But any company you're talking about dealing with, whether it's Microsoft or Zoom or Cisco or Neat or Poly or any other companies that we've been talking about, the research information is there. Doing the research is important.
Yeah. No, homework's important.
Homework's important. Do your homework. That's pretty much all we had for this. We can certainly talk to you about more about what we've experienced personally in our journey and any type of questions you might have on any kind of equipment, but I'm more than happy to listen to any one of you people. In fact, I'm going to put the microphone down and go out over there and see if there's any other conversation that you want to have. But the goal here is to get you to do research before you invest, and we've hopefully given you a highlight of a couple of things that you can do to research.
How does that fit into your solution?
Well, if you're in a large enterprise, can you guys hear me if I'm talking without the microphone? If you're in a large enterprise, you can't go out and do the shopping without security as your partner. So you have to understand what are the requirements, in terms of firewall traversal, in terms of access. They have to be partnered with you to do that. I think that's part and parcel of what you're doing. If you're not talking to them about it, and you can't agree to anything unless it's gone through their pen testing and everything else. If you're in a smaller organization, I don't think it's quite as important to do that. I think you want to make sure that you have a strategy that protects your network. You wouldn't want, the MGM breach came in through
Fish tank?
fish tank, so they're saying, and the one for Home Depot was through an HVAC contractor. You want to make sure that you have your network design and your company isolated enough so that if a piece of equipment gets breached, it's not going to affect your larger company's organization. Appropriate separation of VLAN, separation of passwords. One of the big problems with the first security scare we ever had with video conferencing was some guy, when we were still using ISDN, made a random dialer and called companies and was able to get into all these various companies and see what was going on in the boardroom. And nobody changed the admin passwords. We've now changed that to where most video conferencing gear, thanks to California, needs to have its password changed immediately when you turn it on for the first time. So again, I think, network, firewall, what ports need to be open, large organizations, that's part of the IT. Smaller, you just want to make sure you're isolated. That's how I approach it anyway.
Yeah. For hardware, I think it's just the same considerations for any piece of hardware, whether it's the smart thermometer in the fish tank or a video bar. We have our hardware concerns. Software, the news is good. Zoom and Teams have made security such a priority. Either they're great at marketing or they really, really, really have tripled, quadrupled down on security. And that's where I'd be more worried about breaches in the software side of it. And I feel relatively comfortable that Zoom and Teams in particular are more concerned about than I am. I mean, they put money into it.
Yeah, and I can no longer invite someone to a Zoom call without engaging at least one of their security options.
Yeah, either a
I used to be
password
able
or
to-
the waiting room.
I used to be able to do that, I can't do that anymore. So, yeah, lots of changes. And Microsoft has been held over the barrel for some of their security breaches by the federal government. And, they're very, very security conscious right now. So, again, if you're using one of those larger platforms, I don't think it's as much of an issue. But the hardware could be an issue. You have to make sure that, if you're not air gapped somewhere with AV equipment, then you're in a separate VLAN and you're not risking. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Cool.
So the other one I had was, in making these decisions, one company I deal with, they have one bid out, bid process where they bring in somebody help with the design, picking the solution, then somebody coming to do the integration. Do you believe a consultant should be involved with this? Do you believe that it's always third party is a good rule of practice for this?
Well, one of the things we don't do a very good job of in the AV industry is holding the installation and integration to the specifications that came out at the beginning. Usually it's the 11th hour of the project, everything is squeezed in a rush, you have half the time you thought you were going to have, and nobody goes back to see if NC30 was ever really achieved in the room, or if the back seats can hear what's going on. So I do like the idea of keeping somebody involved, that whoever designed the room should be the person involved to check out and close the room. And in fact, I had created an idle structure where each phase, the engineering, the design, the build, and the operation, each one had to hand it off with acceptance to the other. And at any point in time, you stop the process. If the people who built the room are trying to hand it off to the operations team who runs the room, and it doesn't work right, they won't accept it. And they don't care who's booked the room, and we're not accepting it until it does what it's supposed to do. And if you have a very robust process with good people, I believe that kind of solves that problem.
Basically, just second that. It's like the people whose job it is to install it are worried about installing it. The people's job is designing it. We need someone who is kind of a little bit outside, who's worried about the experience overall.
And that's changing now. We are getting more people that are concerned about the experience, which is good, post-pandemic.
Yes.
It took a while, but now people do care, what do we actually want to do in these homes? What do we want the user experience to be like? And especially with this whole, that's one of the presentations, a couple of presentations I'm giving tomorrow about this concept of, hybrid work versus return to office versus remote. People have demanded you come back to the office and say, well, we didn't really demand, we just really want you to. Well, could you please? And, the office has to be a place where people want to go. And that's not happening, it's happening more now than it was before the pandemic.
Earning the commute.
Yes. But those are tomorrow's presentation. Thank you guys, I appreciate you coming. Feel free to reach out to us if we can help you with anything. Enjoy your rest of